Hello and welcome to the finale of Season 3 of Sequelisers. This, as always, is the show all about fixing the bad sequels that followed good movies. If there was a good movie that was followed by a terrible sequel, we're going to do our very best to try and fix it. As always, I am your host, Jack Chambers, and joining me are the two teams of titular Sequelisers. First up, we have the team of Mr. Alec Plowman.
Sequels. Why did it have to be sequels?
And his teammate, Mr. Stuart Ashen.
It had to be sequels because we called the podcast after it.
That is correct.
Informative.
Join us next week for...
And the Dr. Spalco to their Mutt Williams.
Oh,
I feel that's a bit of an insult, but they're ridiculous names. Tim Maytom.
Throw me the whip, I'll throw you the sequel.
And Matthew Stogdon.
Part-time!
Wow. How often do you sequelize, Matt?
Part-time!
Part-time!
Part-time.
oh God.
Who thought those were going to be our first Harrison Ford impressions in this episode? Just shouting the words, part-time! Over and over again.
There's a better take in the trailer. Why does that happen? I've never understood that.
The film we're hinting at, by the way, folks, as you probably have already guessed,
The Muppets movie.
it's kind of a Kermit impression of part-time. Like,
I would watch the hell out of a Muppets version of this trilogy, by the way.
Yeah, Muppet Treasure Island. but
Why
with the
are
indie.
there so many songs about temples?
we're talking about a sequel that was 19 years in the making. It was 2008's Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, aka Indiana Jones 4. It's the 10th anniversary of this film. That's not something to celebrate.
Yeah, but CGI gopher technology has moved on, so...
That opening shot is just... a bloody gopher.
We kept it in, but Andy Serkis does it, so it's all right.
He just goes, no!
He also provides the mocap for John Hurt.
Because he's dead?
Oh no, ours happens when he's still alive.
Oh, okay.
Weirdly, John Hurt does the mocap for Harrison Ford. It's a very confusing system.
While he's dead. Oh, dear. So, I know a lot of people are like, why are you fixing Temple of Doom? Because it's fine. Shut up.
I mean, Temple of Doom. Okay, Temple of Doom is fine, but then I think Spielberg's gone on the record and said the way that The Last Crusade went was very much almost an apology for Temple of Doom, being the way it was. And it's like, and it is a perfectly serviceable film. It's perfectly fine. It does its job. It's just not as good as Raiders and Last Crusade.
I really like Temple of Doom. It might
I do as well.
Might be my favourite, which is...
Oh, fuck
You
off.
freak.
Oh, Alec with the controversial opinions. As usual, like, you're often coming with these weird...
I really like Temple of Doom. I think it's great.
I'm more with Matt on this, but there is still a lot of good stuff in Temple of Doom. Great imagery.
Short round, for fuck's
Mola
sake.
Ram, short round.
Hatred of Hindus, fantastic. Yeah.
All the good stuff.
Yeah. Everything you look for in a good sequel.
And it's one of those films, it carries you along. You're still having fun watching it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of affection for Temple of Doom, and I think, yeah, it's like we say, perfectly serviceable and a fine installment. But I do remember when Crystal Skull came out, and there was, for example...
Are you going to flinch every time? Say with Crystal Skull.
when people were talking about the nuclear fridge... People would be like, "Oh, but in Temple of Doom, he falls out of the plane in the inflatable raft and survives and slides down a mountain." Indiana Jones has always been like that. And it's like, it's never been nuke a fridge and you'll be fine. I think Temple of Doom is where it skirts closest to that level of ridiculous before the massive ramp up it gets to in Crystal Skull.
I would also say Temple of Doom is immediately disqualified from being sequelized because it's a fucking prequel.
Correct.
Oh, that's very true, isn't it? I always forget that, but yeah.
Because it's a pointless little thing to include. Then Lucas decided to go
there
back
is no
1 year,
reason
whatever
for
was
that movie to
Literally
be
1
a
year. Yeah.
Yeah,
prequel.
it makes no difference to anything, really. It could just be, yeah.
Listeners, if you,
Let me talk to you one second.
Both of you, listen up.
my friends, if you know why Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was a prequel, please write in on a postcard.
Hello,
to Pink,
my name is George,
care of
and I just felt it would
the
be a good
Funny
idea.
Farm.
Is George Lucas Kermit as well?
Yes.
Oh my God! Did George Lucas do the ADR for that part-time line?
Oh.
Hello, part-time.
To be fair, the way he made them reanimate that goddamn Yoda face,
Right?
with that whole begun this Clone War has over and over and over. It probably did say he's not getting it right. He's supposed to say part time. Well, you fucking do it then, George. Part time.
What if he said this Clone War has begun? That sounds better.
Yep.
I like it. I like it.
Fucking
Makes
George.
sense for the character.
We've already gone on such a tangent.
Louder, faster, more intense.
We had to go into Daft Punk for a second. Oh dear. So, yeah, released in 2008, 19 years after The Last Crusade. And it's an interesting one because it had that kind of hype, in almost like a Force Awakens style hype, like, oh my God, there's a new Indiana Jones movie, it's going to be amazing. It had built up that kind of fan base already. And it actually received kind of mixed reviews at the time, and it's gotten worse since. It did win a Razzie, and it's the only Steven Spielberg film to win a Razzie and also not be nominated for any Oscars. But yeah, it was kind of okay, according to critics, when, like, I think our old pal Ebert gave it like 3.5 out of 4, and I was like, what the fucking hell are you thinking, Roger?
I remember writing a review for it at the time and saying it's nowhere near the prestige of the originals. But then it never could be. And we were all sort of fatigued from Star Wars prequels. I know it's like, several years after those things. Well, it's only 3 years after.
You don't forget once you see those.
Exactly.
things,
So
yeah.
we end up thinking, oh, this could have been a lot worse. We could have been in a really dark point here. This was perfectly fine, I guess. It was okay. And that was a sort of enough to tide it over. And then, as you say, the longer you sort of analyze, you think, no, this is terrible. All the things that sort of make an Indiana Jones film, you've sort of almost forgotten they exist. Case in point, every time something grisly or gruesome happens, you tend to cut away. And the reason we have like the
which is the opposite of Temple of Doom, which is gore fest,
bred the PG-13 rating in the first place, that kind of thing, because ultimately Indy's about that sort of 1930s schlocky, or if you go down into the deep dark recesses of the world, you'll find all kinds of untapped, unapproached civilizations, and all kinds of horrible things will happen to you, that kind of mindset. And then eventually the third one was, oh yeah, Nazis, they're the horrible ones. They're everywhere. They still are, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, I remember watching both Raiders and Last Crusade as a kid, on home video or on the TV or whatever, and being told by my parents, oh, you can't look at the final bit where, they either look in the Ark of the Covenant or, drink from the cup and get that, horrific rapid aging / melting of the skin. And there's nothing close to that in this.
Flaming eyeballs, shitty CGI.
Yeah.
That's something.
Terrible CGI fire ants dragging people underground, but
bloody ants.
Ray Winston being sucked into some wind.
I like to think he went back in time and then just ended up in Scum.
The thing is that the Jones films have always had the mindset of man wasn't meant to meddle with certain things. History should be respected, and ultimately Indiana Jones doesn't need to be there because he doesn't actually help the story along much at all, ever. He just happens to be there, and things happen with or without him anyway. Crystal Skull has less of that. There's still kind of the element of it. The problem is ultimately setting it in the 1950s, because in the 30s it was emulating a lot of pulp stories and stuff, and that kind of adventure mindset. And then the 50s, like, what we have to emulate what's happening. And even set in the 40s, it's the war period, and we're trying to emulate that and really sort of capture that mindset and that sort of war serial kind of thing. And then it's the 50s, it's B movies and science fiction and stuff. And then you enter this Soviet psychic stuff as an interesting twist on it all. And this was the classic response at the time, especially from critics and public, was, are aliens or interdimensional beings really that... I have to make that fucking clarification. Are they really any more ridiculous than the Ark of the Covenant? And everyone said, in a resounding voice, yes. Yes, of course they fucking are, you absolute tool.
Because it's just such a shift from where the series has been previously. It's been so rooted in myth / kind of theological stuff.
that theological supernatural stuff.
Yeah.
And this goes hard, not hard sci-fi, but crazy sci-fi.
Yeah.
I actually don't have a problem with the 50s thing and with the aliens thing, but the
Interdimensional beings, please.
no.
We're calling them aliens. I see an alien, I say alien. And that's why I just got a job with the government on the border.
The issue that I have with it is that they, in the way it is written, it is willfully obscure about what's going on in a way that the Ark of the Covenant isn't, even though they open it and great terror happens. But we as the audience have enough cultural context to understand what these things are, to understand why the things that are happening are happening. The problem is you don't have that same thing for aliens, and at the end I just find that as a film it is willfully obscure. And like it goes, something's going on, you don't know what it is, Indy doesn't know what it is, then they go home, he's married now. That's the I think that's one of the biggest issues with this for me. Is it fundamentally it is a bad script, and that might sound like an obvious thing to say on this program because it always is, but Indiana Jones Crystal Skull just plumbs the depths of that by willfully ignoring things about the character, by not staying true to the spirit of the original films, by there are so many things in there, so many decisions from a narrative perspective that just don't make sense, that there is an illogic to the actual continuity of it, in a way that the other Indiana Jones films are actually fairly tight in that respect. And this is what makes it frustrating. I think there's that tight, snappy serial filmmaking, and this feels really kind of bloated and heavy by comparison.
Extremely drawn out.
Yeah.
See, I didn't mind the sci-fi thing because first film, very much reminiscent of the old radio serials. Yeah. Second film, chronologically, not the second film, but I'm calling it the second film. Fight me, Spielberg. Please, you're old. I can probably beat you. I could bet you money beforehand to become rich. Look, there's no bad outcome to this.
He's hard, mate. He's going to fucking have you.
He'll hit me with his director's chair and I'll just regret everything.
Turning into like pro wrestling and it just
He'll get his mate
hit
Lucas
him with the
on
chair, my
Oh,
God.
no, Lucas. He'll have some massive thing come out of his goiter and strangle me.
Lucas running interference.
Stephen, fetch me my hammer.
You like Old Boy?
Anyway, yeah, so like the first film, very rooted in the radio serials. The second film, sort of the lurid pulp comics of the 30s. 40s, you're talking about the grand adventure films of Lawrence Raymond. That. So it makes sense then that the next sort of thing along was the pulpy sci-fi stuff.
I think the problem with that, though, is that if it was going to do that, it should have gone all in on
Yes.
it.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
it tries to have its cake and eat it. It tries to remain an Indiana Jones, like what we think of as an Indiana Jones film, but also dabble in this new area without...
That's it. We're going to do new stuff, guys, but also we're going to make it like the old ones as well. And now we've gone in two directions at once, and we've got magnetic aliens.
And it's trying to do the sci-fi, but tying it into something ancient, because that's what we expect from an Indiana Jones film. And it's a bit like you were talking about like audience expectations when it comes to it. The kind of the iconic fears when it comes to aliens and sci-fi in that kind of regard, and especially from that era, aren't the stuff that it taps into. You know, like Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, it's like it's all about like classic fear of the wrath of God and stuff like Old Testament stuff. And like the threat of the Crystal Skulls is like it's mostly about the communist brain transmissions, and then it's weird knowledge, like, and then it goes back to knowledge that man was not meant to have. And it's, if you're going to do aliens, it should be about like people being replaced or abduction.
Because anything really to do with the 50s sci-fi, it was all the Red Scare, wasn't it? Yeah. You know, how many of those sci-fi films were actually just thinly veiled critiques of communism? Yeah. All of them.
Again, they sort of touch on it and then they shy away from it, and it can't make its mind up what it wants to be.
Needs to be a paranoid thriller or something about people being weirdly replaced, because that was like 90% of those things, you know, or both, some of them.
I believe on the DVD and or Blu-ray for Crystal Skull, there was a classic documentary behind the scenes thing about, why did it take you so long and why this story, etc., etc. And in apparently 1996 or something like that, when Independence Day came out, there was an idea to do aliens films or an alien Indiana Jones something, and Spielberg said, nope, They've done it. That's the biggest alien film we're going to have ever. That's the biggest thing. We can't top that. Never going to do it. And it kept burrowing away at Lucas, and he came back and said, "Oh, I got this idea." And
why was he John Travolta?
he takes
got
many
an
forms.
idea.
Takes many forms in his shifting. Effectively speaking, Spielberg said, "Okay, great. What's it about?" I said, "Oh, about interdimensional beings and such." He said, "What are but what do they look like, George?" "Well, they look like aliens." I said, "Right, fine. Well, we can't really do that then, George. I've done aliens. I've done it, and it has to end up with a big fucking flying saucer. It has to be a flying saucer flying away."
That disappoints me because, again, 50 stuff, you're going to have a flying saucer in, but it's so shoehorned in. Oh, actually, it turns out that the pyramid was a flying saucer. Make it one or the bloody other.
Yeah, it's a mash of... As we've said, it's the problem of trying to shoot on something doesn't understand how to put it in, and also at the same time, we mentioned this earlier, going back and watching like Indiana Jones, or Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it flies by in the first half an hour. There's so much that goes in, and you think, this is actually racing ahead. You almost forget how quickly it's done, like you're watching an edit or something like that, and it's just so much being put through. Whereas if you rewatch Crystal Skull, there's that stupid gopher nonsense. Then there's the, hey, we're cool 50s teens having a, drag race kind of thing with those soldiers, and one Russian soldier's like totally into it for some fucking reason until he's not, and they go on the army base, and they get Indy out of the back of the car, and he has some stupid lines, etc., etc., and then it's the Area 51 kind of.
That's another weird thing about this film, is that it really wants you to know that you're in the 50s. And Raiders of the Lost Ark is like, it's incidental. There's the 30s, you're in the 30s. I mean, until the Nazis show up, obviously. But it doesn't hammer home that it's a period film in the same way that Crystal Skull does. Crystal Skull is very aware that it is Indiana Jones in the 50s. Indiana Jones is old. Isn't that funny? Let's make a big deal out of this.
It's the difference between going from something that is just set in inverted commas the past, and something like, say, Stranger Things, where it just keeps saying the 80s, screaming it over and over and over, and you're like, oh god, that is, or fucking Happy Days. It was like, hey guys, remember how to work? We used to have to put money in jukeboxes.
Here's the weird thing: is that Indiana Jones feels like Happy Days. The way that that's laid out there, it feels like they watched Happy Days and went, that's what the 50s was, right? That's how it worked. What if we set Indy in Happy Days? If
you told me that Ron Howard directed Crystal Skull, I'd be saying, yeah, that makes sense.
It's the thing of like the whole. I mean, we touched on the ridiculousness of the nuclear fridge already, but like, there's no reason for there to be a nuclear explosion in this film for all that stuff to happen. It's just because the 50s nuclear panic. It's such a unnecessary. It does nothing for the plot.
It's literally just the imagery and the reference.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like Alec says, it's trying so hard to root itself in the 50s and like, oh look, here's rebellious teens, because that's what we think of in the 50s. Oh, and
that's a greaser.
Those greasers, yeah.
Right, yeah. It's like a whiteboard literally just full of 50s concepts and cramming them all in desperately for some reason. And again, as you said, I don't think there's anything about the 30s that's quintessentially. I mean, yes, okay, you could argue that the period, the clothes, the technology, all that stuff. That's fine, but none of that. And again, the Nazis, even things like that. But none of it's really to say this is set in the year 1935. Have you got that yet? Because nobody cares. It's irrelevant. Arguably, you just need to know it's in the past. Planes were slower.
It also misses one of the most important things in an Indiana Jones film for me, like the James Bond opening. You were supposed to get a little bit of his last adventure. Where's that?
No cold open, yeah.
We
exactly.
Get gophers. CGI.
That is his last
gophers.
adventure, underground.
That's a glove puppet. He's trying out his new kids' TV show, because kids' TV shows are things starting off in the 50s, guys. 50s.
It doesn't start with, because obviously he barrels out of the back of that. I must admit, I will give this much. When he gets huffed out of the back of that trunk of the car, boot, if you're in Britain, of the car with Ray Winston in that. That must have been an amazing car ride for those two in that hot New Mexico desert. The hat rolls away, he gets a bit of a punch in the face, wherever it's supposed to be, and you get the silhouette. That's quite a nice little intro, and then it goes to toilet. But
Does that happen before the gopher?
No, that's after.
Oh, good, it is after. Thank God for that.
Yeah,
I
it's
thought-
still
It literally
totally
goes from Mound of
misremembered
Dirt
it.
to Gopher.
So, yeah.
Yes, that's right. And then it becomes, once they're on the base, Indy's introduced. But I think they're like, oh, we picked these guys up on a dig in Mexico or something like that. And that's the sort of like, see, we did it. It's like, no, I don't think you did. I think you've completely lost what you were supposed to be doing there. That's nothing.
The two things I want: a cold opening of a last adventure, and Indy not actually having any particular agency on the plot. Those are the two things I want from Indiana Jones. And a talking hat, but they never do that, so, you know.
Slytherin!
One day.
Oh my god, I'm now picturing like an Indiana Jones, but it's Mario Odyssey, where like the hat has eyes and he can throw it onto people.
One of the big issues with this film, and an issue that both Spielberg and Lucas have making films, is that they go through this weird thing during this time period. Starts in the 90s with the Star Wars Special Edition and then goes through with the E.T. Special Edition, where they get very concerned because they are parents about making films that are suitable for children. And especially in the 90s, where there are so many concerns about what is suitable for children. And this movie ends up being a very sanitized Indiana Jones movie as a result, which ironically, I think massively decreases its appeal to children.
Despite the fact that it's got the highest rating in I don't mean in terms of like successful. I mean in like BBFC classification. It goes from a PG, 12A.
I don't know what it is in the
Is it in case the
US,
kids try and avoid
but
nuclear explosions by climbing into fridges?
Probably. It's dangerous.
It's an interest. I mean, that's a conversation for another day with the change in ratings, because I think things do get rated higher now anyway, because people won't go and see a movie if it's not a PG-13. So I think that sometimes, like, there are plenty of movies that I've seen recently where I'm like, why was that a PG-13? It's like, oh, because everything is, because everybody shoots for that.
Unless you're Pixar or something
Or
animated.
going for a hard R /
Well,
18.
yes, of course, on the other end of
And a
things,
lot of 18 stuff will be edited down to 15 these
Correct,
days,
yeah.
won't it? Or
Especially
pitched
for
at
us.
15, yeah.
But the interesting thing with this is that this is it's an Indiana Jones movie that's really lost its bite and has lost a lot of the sense of peril because of that. Were you saying Jack Indy doesn't fire a gun in this movie?
He doesn't shoot a pistol for the entire film.
Yeah.
And it's a good 40 minutes before he throws a punch, something like that. It's like the 90s Spider-Man cartoon where he's not allowed to do anything violent, so he just swing kicks everything because he can't throw punches, it's too violent.
The big problem is that it stops Indy from being a man of action, which then kind of defeats the point of Indiana Jones being a Gryffindor.
He's too bloody old as well, which doesn't help.
Well, the whole him being old thing was an idea of Harrison Ford to
Age.
to be a grumpy old fuck. Yeah, exactly. But like the fact that he's an old man and they make jokes about it was Harrison's idea to kind of, I think he said to like, but the audience have aged with me and I don't want them to feel bad about being old, so I want to make it funny. What a terrible idea.
Surely they'd feel better if you just kicked ass like you
Yeah.
still
We'd be
probably
like,
can.
oh yeah, cool, I could still kick some ass. It's like, no, I'm just a fat old man. Even though he's actually in quite good shape.
Yeah,
in his defense.
for the odd gag, I think it would have been fine, but it hammers it home so much. It's so meta, and I'm going to bring back Zombie Homer, because that one guy liked it, but it's Indy being very aware that he's Indy is a problem in this movie. Characters being aware that he is the character Indiana Jones. I think that is a big issue that this film suffers from, and it takes out some of the believability of it. It really takes you out. There are several points where it's like, oh wow, Indiana Jones is saying things about how he's Indiana Jones. I don't like that.
Yeah, and I think the other problem with aging Indy and making that such a part of it and going, oh, he's not really capable anymore, but and similarly targeting it at the kids, is that you have good old Mutt Williams, Shia LaBeouf, who is such a poochie of a character of like, hey, look, we made him for the kids. Isn't he cool? Look, he's swinging with the monkeys.
Even called Mutt. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw it out there. I do not think that Mutt Williams is executed well at all in Indiana Jones Crystal Skull, but I feel like he is the character that the film needed to make it work, and that if they had gotten that right, it could have been a better movie.
AKA not cast Shia LaBeouf because he's rubbish.
Because I think Indiana Jones in more of a mental role makes sense if you're doing
Batman
old
Beyond
indie.
that
He's
shit.
a fucking professor. He literally should
Yes,
be mentoring
yeah.
people.
He's literally a mentor and a teacher. Like,
He should be becoming Xavier.
But putting him in there does not.
And it's the thing of the character that they craft for him is such a transparent attempt at being like, this is what cool kids are, or at least what they were like in the 50s. Like, if they'd have bothered to actually make a decent character that was meant to carry on the legacy, and you have this idea of passing the torch, it would be so much more effective. But it feels like it feels like a first draft character of like, yeah, we'll give him a son and he'll be this cool kid and he'll drive a hot rod or a motorbike, and he'll be like Marlon Brando in The Wild One.
I'm going to make a bit of a controversial statement. I don't like Mutt Williams as a character. To a degree, I agree with Alec in the sense that, written better, he could be the future of the franchise. I agree with that sort of thing. The controversial element is, I think Shia LaBeouf did a good job with what he had.
You are wrong.
No, hear me out.
I also agree with you on this.
Thank you. So the reason is because it's a terrible fucking character. It's stupid as hell, and as Tim said, it's the whole, this is what a kid's like, right? He has a knife, and he's a hothead, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna use my comb in your drink to comb my hair. What a twat. I mean, to be fair, if I look at, like, it's an old man writing a kid. It's the same way, like, Harrison was like, slow down, I didn't mean to insult your mom, whatever. You know, I've known a lot of moms. I banged your mom. I am your mom. I'm an interdimensional being. Anyway, the point is that LaBeouf in, like, the Transformers films, trundling along. Then he turns up in this, and he's genuinely trying.
This is after the first Transformers?
I want to say, 2008.
I think it's after the first.
So whenever LaBeouf's character is talking to or about John Hurt's character of Ox, whoever the fuck his name is.
Oxley
McOxley.
Ollie Oxenfree.
That's the one. He's genuinely acting and emoting very well. The problem is, his character is dumb and doesn't say, it's just a snake! Grab the snake! It's really stupid. And they are trying to say, like, and the fucking sword fight. There's just so many stupid elements, and they don't do anything with him. I would say, however, though, he does a good enough job, because I think if you'd written that exact same role and give it to River Phoenix, who arguably does the best I'm being a young version of
Indiana
Harrison.
Jones. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
He still would come out going, this is a well-performed thing, but it is dog shit because of what it is. Because, again, I don't think there's much difference in terms of what the character does in a weird way. But ultimately, because we have to hate LaBeouf, because, of course, we do, because he's ridiculous. And how the end cock teases us all with the whole, the hat's rolling towards Shia. What does it mean?
You ain't having it yet, kid.
Yeah, I'm going to take that back off you for a second. I can't wait to see him in Indiana Jones 5. I'm sure that will
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because Mutt Williams isn't in it. That's been confirmed, I believe.
Yeah, because, of course.
So something Tim said has just sparked a memory. There's an internet review man who does comics called Linkara, and he has a character called 90s Kid. And it's just a comically one-dimensional character with the backwards cap and the glasses and just everything. 90s stereotypes. Mutt Williams is 50s Kid.
Yes, he completely is. Completely. Painfully.
I do wonder why, given that Disney now own Lucasfilm and Marvel and have done multiple Star Wars comics since that happened, we haven't had an Indiana Jones comic, because
Does somebody else have the rights somewhere, and it's like got a blah blah blah?
yeah,
We haven't had an Indiana Jones anything, which I find
Yeah.
very interesting.
There were indie comics in the 90s. I've read a couple. But, one of them has the same name as our pit. But that's the only similar thing, because the comic was pretty bad.
Indiana Jones 2000?
Oh, man. Indiana Jones Beyond. Yeah.
Indian space.
wait, if it was a 90s comic, it'd be Indiana Jones Blood Strike.
Yeah.
Just
Extreme indie.
why is Indy
Jones
got
spelled
claws
with a
now?
Z.
Well, his whip hurt him and claws grew. It doesn't matter.
He's got a robot arm. He's got pouches. He's got pouches on his hat.
Pouches
And
everywhere.
a laser eye.
Pouches on his whip, pouches on his hand.
You never see below his ankles because the artist doesn't like drawing it. But yeah.
Ah, Liefeld.
He's got whips for arms and whips for eyes.
Whips for teeth
Whips.
and whips for miles.
Whips for tits. It's Indiana Jones.
Ah, whips for tits. My old website. I do miss that.
Wait, we haven't done a fucking synopsis.
Well,
We've talked about it for 9 hours.
Well, this is the thing. It's such one of those films that just once you start chiseling away at it.
Oh yeah.
Like an old tomb.
There's plenty more to get into, but we've had a couple of requests from listeners. My little synopses were kind of like almost like the poster description, where I'd be like, and what happens next? Who finds out? People moaned at me for like, I've seen the original, tell me what actually happens. So I actually have to write like a proper synopsis now.
You could just tell them to watch the original. Then
I did. And they're like, well, I don't want to do that.
The whole thing would be more fun.
We don't want to punish people that way.
That is true. I could understand people not wanting to watch this. But they don't know till they've seen it. You can't have an option on a film until you've seen it.
I feel that people should watch this film as like a rite of passage. This is adulthood.
Well, you should watch it first if you haven't seen any, because you're watching it and it's all right, and then you watch the others and go, oh. Like when my girlfriend hadn't seen Jurassic Park and watched Jurassic World. Then she watched Jurassic Park and she's like, that's like the same film, but 1,000 times better.
Yep.
Correct, yes. So, wish me luck, gentlemen, because this goes in places that
Dun. Dun.
don't go anywhere.
Dun.
In 1957, Dr. Irina Spalko, played by Kate Blanchett, and a convoy of Soviet agents posing as US soldiers infiltrate a military base in the Nevada desert. Indiana Jones...
Feel free to harmonise on the Rum-a-Tum-Tums.
As Matt mentioned earlier, Indiana Jones is at the back of a car, dressed as Indiana Jones for some reason. I'm ignoring the gopher. Fuck the gopher. And he pops out and he is led to a crate in Hangar 51. Ooh, I wonder what that could be. Which holds the remains of we call it an alien, interdimensional being. It's the alien from Roswell's. How exciting. Indy uses gunpowder and
treason and plot
to find a magnetic crate.
He uses grenade bits, doesn't he?
And then like shot basically from a shotgun shell pellet thing. So it's magnetic to some stuff, but not to other stuff. Like people's belts and stuff would be going crazy. People's glasses, like your blood. Weird, it was basically Magneto in a box and it would fuck you up. He attempts to escape, but is foiled by his partner Mac, played by the aforementioned Ray Winstone, who reveals he's actually working for the Soviets. After a fight and a ridiculous vehicle chase through the warehouse, Indiana escapes on a rocket sled into the desert.
Oh God, I've forgotten.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of these moments of like, oh fuck yeah, that's the thing that happens.
It should be pointed out, it is now nighttime.
Yes, it just arbitrarily goes into nighttime for some reason, because that's how films work. Where he stumbles onto a nuclear test town and survives the nuclear blast by hiding in a supposedly lead-lined fridge.
And at that point, it's daytime again.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
because they arrive in the day, the rocket thing happens at night, and then
by
it's
the
daytime.
time he gets to the town,
That
it's
sounds like
nighttime.
that was edited in from another part of the film or something, doesn't it? Yeah.
Sorry to go.
Weird to have a nuclear explosion in the first 10 minutes of your film, but fuck it, why not? He obviously survives somehow, which we need to discuss in a moment. And while being debriefed, he discovers he is under FBI investigation because of Mac's ties to the Soviets. Indy returns to Marshall College, where he is offered an indefinite leave of absence to avoid being fired because of the ongoing investigation. At a train station, he is stopped by Mutt Williams, played by the aforementioned Shia LaBeouf, and told that his old colleague, Harold Oxley, played by John Hurt, disappeared after discovering a crystal skull near the Nazca lines in Peru. Jones and Mutt... What?
Greece is well known for stopping professors in the street and telling them what happened to their
Professor, you need to go check out the Nazca lines.
He does this while he's riding on a fucking motorbike.
He rides alongside the train on a motorbike and it's fucking
Thankfully,
stupid.
the station doesn't come to an end. The platform, I should say.
It's infinite train platform. Oh, dear. Anyway, Jones and Mutt go to a diner. He passes Indy a letter from the aforementioned Oxley. Soviet agents approach them and chase them. India realizes that the Soviets were trailing Mutt to get him to decode Oxley's letter. In Peru, Indiana and Mutt discover that Oxley was locked in a church-operated psychiatric
They went to
hospital.
Peru, guys. It's just one of those things they do.
I mean, it just goes, he's in Peru now. It's like, okay.
When you meet a greaser in the street, you'll probably end up in Peru with him fairly surely.
And then he references the young Indiana Jones stuff.
He does, yeah.
Somebody who,
which is...
It's bullshit.
Yeah, which is what Harrison Ford showed up in as Indiana Jones before this. Like,
it's like the really old,
actually.
with plays a flute or something,
Yes.
and some snow falls on the bad guy. God! We're not making this up, guys. Seriously.
So they discover that Oxley has been locked up in a church-operated psychiatric hospital until the Soviets kidnapped him. In Oxley's former cell, Indiana discovers clues to the grave of Francisco de Orellana, a conquistador who went missing in the 1500s while seeking Akator. Indiana finds the crystal skull that Oxley hid in Orellana's grave, and the Soviets capture Indiana and Mutt and take them to the camp where they're holding Oxley, as well as Mutt's mother and Indiana's ex-lover, Marion Ravenwood, played by Karen Allen. And we need to talk about Marion Ravenwood in a minute because fuck this movie. The Soviets believe the skull is from an extraterrestrial life form and holds great psychic power, which is Matt kind of touched on the Soviet psychic weird Rasputin stuff. Marion reveals that Mutt's real name is, in fact, dun 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 Henry Jones III. And
Why, if
I know. I know.
and her was split up, did she name him after Indiana Jones?
I love that the supposed father had no say in this, and he was like, "Okay, we're gonna have this kid."
I'm going to name you after your deadbeat prick of a dad. Oh, great to see you. This easy kid.
Maybe after
Okay.
your deadbeat prick of a dad and his deadbeat prick of
Yeah.
a dad.
At this point, quickly sidetrack, very, very quickly. There are two old man jokes that I actually like in this film, and one of them happens at this time. One of them is him swinging and saying, "Oh, I thought it was much nearer," or whatever it was, and he punches the other guy because he's trying to whip across. And the old man not being as fast as he used to be, that's kind of funny. Old men appreciate that kind of joke, like, "Oh, I relate to that." And the second one,
Said old man Matt Stogdon.
when he's in the Area 51 thing, he's whipping across. and he's,
I like that you approved of it. You were like, old men will relate to that. I see.
One for
It's
the
written
olds
by
in
two
there.
old men starring an old man. It's all about old man. But the point is that the other old man joke is, "Kid, let me tell you some advice. Do what you want to do. It's fine." And then he finds out his son, the hypocrisy comes in and says, "Why didn't you make him stay in school?" I rather enjoy that joke a little bit because Indiana Jones is a dick. Carry on.
The four of them escape, leading to a lengthy vehicle chase involving a sword fight and a whole bunch of incredibly hungry giant killer ants. So you mentioned it earlier, Tim, that drag things underground. I had assumed they just consume them on the spot in like hyper fast speeds.
Like scarabs.
It's really, I assumed it was kind of like scarabs and they're just like a skeleton left. It's not entirely clear. People just disappear into the ants for some reason.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that's not how ants work.
Yeah. Well, there's a point where you see them dragging one of them into like this like a sewer manhole sized ant hole, and it's like, why would they build a nest that like, are they regularly dragging like deer down?
They're like mega killer ants that just eat
He gets
deer
stuck
and
halfway
stuff.
as well. I'm pretty sure his legs are just sticking out the whole time. He doesn't actually go in. But of course, we're forgetting the monkeys. That chase
the
has
monkeys.
some amazing monkeys.
Does it though?
No, of course not. Shit. Although a friend of mine
They're
did say-
friends with Shia LaBeouf.
Oh,
they talk about how to swing in the jungle like fucking Tarzan. But my friend at the time said, "Oh, what? Okay, so we're okay with the monkey in Raiders, and we're not okay with this." I was like, "Yeah, completely. The monkey in Raiders A was real. B was, I'm pretty sure, a Nazi." Or he gives us Nazi salute in one
does,
point,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
he dies from eating bad dates.
Yeah.
These monkeys,
They ate his brain in the second one.
yeah, exactly. These monkeys are horrific, and I don't know why they have an allegiance to, inverted commas, the good guys.
yeah. It's just that nature is on our side. We're fighting for the planet or whatever. And also, like, Mutt swings faster on a vine than jeeps driving on a road.
Yeah, but
What
jeeps
the
swinging
fuck?
off vines tend to be very slow due to the weight.
I forget. Is it during this chase or is it later where the giant like buzz saws that
That's this
cut
one.
through the forest show up? Oh god, that feels like some Michael Bay nonsense. That feels like when they're like in the island where they just happen to be driving behind a truck that's like carrying giant wheels from trains.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I must admit, it's that middle 2000s. We think CGI is amazing and near misses all look really cool, like the Stampede in King Kong. And it's like, this is not working. And kind of like take a very recent example, in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, in all the trailers, this won't spoil anything, when Chris Pratt leaps through the waking Tyrannosaurus's mouth. And it's like, how? I'm sorry, he's not a fucking... he's not slowing time to avoid the jaws of death. It removes so much grounded realism to have, these so many near misses that just feel absurd.
Realism is out the fucking window in this movie. So, yeah. They eventually arrive at the Temple of Akator, which is like a Mayan pyramid in the rainforest. And Mac is now claiming he's a CIA double agent working against the Russians. He goes in the temple with Indiana and the group, but he's actually leaving a trail of homing devices so that Kate Blanchett's Spalko can follow them in later.
And they look ridiculous. They look like they're like fucking Kinder Egg.
Yeah.
Size. They're fucking absurd. I mean, it makes sense for the period, but also, how is he subtly dropping these red, shining, beeping things in the woods that are the size of chicken eggs? Beep, beep. What's that? Nothing!
Just going to lay another egg in the...
Whoa!
Just leaving the bread
chunks.
Fucking hell.
The group enter the temple, and Indy uses the skull to open the door to a chamber tomb where 13 crystal skeletons, one missing a skull, funnily enough, are seated on thrones.
Again, the key is his face. Nobody opens a fucking door with their face.
It opens it with his skull.
Yeah.
So you can only open this if you have the skull of the aliens that are inside it already?
Yeah. I mean, I know
How
that...
did it get out
But we
if
just
it's
want the
all
skull
sealed?
back, so we don't waste our time anybody else coming in.
John Hurt steal it, or did the conquistadors steal it?
Wasn't there another crystal skull? Is the skull that John Hurt has the same as the one that they find in Area 51?
Oh no, that's a smaller magnetic dead alien.
Yes, it's a little magnetic dead alien.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, of course.
Fucking
Yeah.
hell.
I mean, come on, Tim.
of course.
obviously,
How did you not
yes.
remember that, Tim? Jesus
Yeah, that's
Christ.
a good point. Yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. Let's open things with skulls, shall we? Because that makes sense. Surprise, surprise, the Soviets catch up with them and again reveal that Mac is a bad guy for the second time in the film. Don't do the reveal at the beginning if you're going to do it at the end and make it seem like a big deal. Anyway, of course, the bad guy, Spalko, places the skull onto the skeleton. It begins communicating to the group through John Hurt's character Oxley using an ancient Mayan dialect. Indy translates this, because, you know, he's Indiana Jones. He knows he's, as Alec rightly said, he knows he's Indiana Jones and he just knows every ancient language that's ever been written. Translates this to mean that the aliens want to give them a great gift. Spalko demands to know everything, and the skulls begin transferring knowledge into her mind.
Which is really rude, considering that the great gift was a tray of Ferrero Rocher.
Neatly stacked into a Mayan pyramid. A ziggurat of Ferrero Rocher.
Of deliciousness.
as the aliens are known to do.
Obviously. That's how we got Ferrero Rocher, isn't it? We didn't make it. Yeah. We found it in the
It
field.
was a gift from the ancient gods.
So you notice I've been saying alien this whole time. Turns out they're interdimensional beings. It opens a portal into a different dimension, and what the fuck?
In a
Why?
flying saucer, though.
Yeah, why is there a flying saucer if they're interdimensional beings?
Who knows? It doesn't make any sense. They can just open portals with their brains, so they don't need flying saucers, I guess. Oxley regains his sanity for some reason after being brain mashed, and explains the aliens are interdimensional beings who taught the ancient warriors their advanced technology. He taught them, like, irrigation and stuff like that.
Not
and
that advanced. The rest of us figured it out.
Right, you think, like, oh, by the way, here's an interdimensional portal. That'd be quite cool.
No. You get the irrigation right first, then we talk.
And this is, and I'm sure we'll get more SJW comments on YouTube.
Bring them on.
For this, but this is the same as all the it must have been aliens that built the pyramids and stuff like that racist horseshit. That's like, these civilizations couldn't possibly have figured out this stuff by themselves.
These brown savages couldn't possibly come up with things. We're the pinnacle of civilization.
Well, it's a sort of pseudo link to Jones, and not a. It's an okay film. The Lost City of Zed recently, which is a really proper sort of old Aguirre-style adventuring kind of film. Charlie Hunnam doing an okay job, etc. The general crux of the film is old British white people saying, "Listen here, boy. There's no way in hell that these people, these savages, made pots. That'd be stupid. We did. We introduced them to them.
Bloody aliens, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the whole film is basically, no, I'll prove it to you. You're full of shit. They had their own cultures and they were advanced because they said, no, it's not possible because, listen here, no. And that's the quintessential, we must crush. And you're right, it is going to be, we're going to get shredded on the internet for it, but fuck you, internet. You're right, it plays up to the myth of white saviory. It has to be some external force because, but yeah, as you say, a brown-skinned man couldn't come up with this.
Yeah.
Or woman.
Yeah. So the good guys escape as this portal opens up, but Mac and the soldiers are sucked into the portal because, bad guys get the consequences, good guys don't get the
Doesn't Mac
consequences.
have like a very near... Doesn't he vaguely redeem himself?
He redeems himself there, but goes, sorry.
Yeah.
And he get
Bye!
And it's incredibly similar to the same bit in the Mummy films, which of course had come along between original indie trilogy
Arnold
and
Vosloo and
the bit with Benny in the pyramid where he's gathering up all the treasure and so doesn't escape, and Ray Winston's character does almost exactly the same thing. He's trying to grab the gold and they're like, we've got to get out of here, and he's like, oh.
And Indy is like, I'll still try and save you because it's the right thing to do. And he's like, don't worry about it, Josie, because I'm already Ray Winston.
wherever I'm going, I'll be rich.
Straight to Beowulf. By Robert Zemeckis. So the skeletons then form into a single giant being.
It's not over yet.
Some reason.
So they're because they're interdimensional. All 13 of them was actually the same thing.
It's like they slot together, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
they layer over
Like a
each
transform
There's an
fucking
amazing-
Voltron bullshit.
There's an amazing bit of CGI where there's just a tiny bit of an impact shudder, bit of recoil there as the other skeletons hit himself. I'm like, why? That just looks stupid. It looks stupid. Full stop. I'm like, ooh. It's like, that's how I wake up in the morning. I reform myself from my 13 other bits of body, and then I glare menacingly at Kate Blanchett as her eyes explode every morning.
Well, we've all had hangovers.
So yes, Barker's eyes explode. Kate Blanchett's brain melts and her eyes explode out of her face from all the knowledge. And she just like melts and goes into the portal, basically. The temple crumbles. And a flying saucer appears and flies away and lets the Amazon River just flood into the valley.
Dead, even though he's just skeleton.
I think he's just having a bit of a nap. Someone messed with this
That's
stuff.
that's how you do it. Just split into 13 things. But I suppose somebody stole the skull off one, couldn't wake up again.
Reforming him, yeah.
So he like Horcruxed himself into 13 identical crystal
And kept
mini
them in the
copies
same
of
room.
himself who kept...
I think it's like going streaking and someone steals your pants, you can't get out of the water, but when the pants are returned, you can then get out of the water.
Finally, a metaphor I
You're
understand.
welcome.
Thank God for you and your relatable metaphors, Matthew. So that ends all the crazy adventures, and we head home. Indy is reinstated and made an associate dean at the college. And then
Because the FBI dropped it.
because
reasons.
You get promotion for not being a criminal. And then
That's another one of those like horse shit. Oh, that's a thing I remember from the 50s, so we'll put it in. It's like tying into the House Un-American Committee and stuff, and all the Soviet witch hunts and because Indy was cool, so he'd be under suspicion by the FBI. It's like
And have saved the entire war effort.
yeah.
Being a war hero. I mean, I don't have a problem with him fighting well in the war. That's great. There's no problem with that at all. But then at the start, I was like, he probably works for the commies. But my God, he's got 5 purple hearts. Is that possible? Sure.
I wish we'd seen that movie. That sounds like it's one of those things where it's like you briefly said a thing that sounds much better than
Which
the
is
thing.
classic
Can we watch?
Lucas.
Yeah.
Classic Lucas.
also, him and Marion get married for some reason.
Yep.
That's the end of the film.
Yep. Ends on that.
What the fuck?
Dun, 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 dun. Walking down the aisle.
Walking down the aisle.
Are you married now, Indy? Part-time.
The title to that movie could be Indiana Jones and the Shia LaBeouf, and that sounds like a sex
Sounds
thing.
like a thing, yeah.
Indiana Jones and the actual cannibal.
Running from your life from Shia LaBeouf.
Indiana Jones and the Chamber of Secrets. My God, they work. They work. Harry Potter one's on. Indiana Jones and the Philosopher's Stone.
Indiana Jones and the Goblet of Fire.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
a thing, yeah.
And the Order of the Phoenix. Good.
Yeah.
Deathly Hallows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones and where to find them.
Literally X marks the spot.
Stop the episode. Tim's won it.
Jones plural.
Yeah. We have a good time on the show.
So I want to come back and talk about Marion because this film ruins that character.
Okay.
Oh, I don't like you enjoying this movie at all.
No. Karen Allen, I think, did okay. But she leans into the I'm a mom now role a little too much from the feisty, I'm going to beat the crap out of everybody.
Right, but you were justifying Shia LaBeouf earlier, saying, oh, it's a bad script he's working with, and his performance is fine, but you've got the same thing with Karen
That's
Allen.
what I'm saying. She
It's a
doesn't-
terrible script.
Yeah, she does an okay. Well, this is the interesting thing. Karen Allen, I think, does a fine job as acting in it, but the character isn't Marion Ravenwood, in my opinion.
Correct. I agree.
But then there's things like, for example, okay, I wrote my review for Ocean's 8 recently and said Kate Blanchett was one of the best things of this film because, of course, she is Kate Blanchett. She's been doing amazingly. Almost everything she's in, she's great in, except this film.
Yeah.
Because what she's given is ridiculous. And again, what's been given to Marion is, I guess, the misremembered memory of George. Again, George Lucas writes a young Darth Vader. It's like, you wrote Darth Vader. How can you be fucking this up so much? How do you not know what the character was to people? This is where we get to the dangerous territory of the unevolving character. Indiana Jones falls out the back of a car wearing the same clothes he did 20 years ago. Hello, I'm still an old grumpy man. And
Not a bad Harrison Ford, by the way.
yeah, it's all right. Wait till you hear my Marion Ravenwood.
Oh.
I'm Marion Ravenwood.
Oh, Ray Winstone.
It's the love of your life, Marion Ravenwood.
I've got a son now, Indy. Look at him. He's a dog or something.
His name is Henry, after his father. It's a good name. Bit like your name, isn't it, Joe? I'm not getting it. I'm very old. Oh my God, it is your name. Oh, if only there was some sort of
Did
reason.
you just do a Forrest Gump moment of his name's like my name?
Jesus, that's exactly what that is. Fucking hell. Forrest Gump and Indiana Jones. So Marion Ravenwood, not a great character, but I think Karen Allen did fine with what she had.
But she was a good character. That's what I'm
the problem.
saying.
Yes, you're right, though. That's
This
correct.
film
I would agree
fucked
with
the...
that.
I'm not saying this film fucked the
was
character.
never a good character. Ravenwood.
Ravenwood used to be cool and dynamic and interesting and had her own motivations and stuff. Now she's two-dimensional and I'm a mum. That's it.
Also, she's like one of the only characters to come back from the original trilogy.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
no Salah. They argue, oh, well, I mean, and then obviously with certain characters, actors dying off, it makes complete sense. But then I remember that bullshit line that Harrison Ford gave around the time, like, well, Sean Connery is too old to play my dad. It's like, well, time hasn't moved. You're still the same fucking age distance, you Burke. And you're both old men.
They're surprisingly close in age as well. There's like a 12-year age gap.
Exactly.
Or something.
And it's and the thing is, him not being there also kind of works. Not bringing like Short Round back.
Yeah, I wanted
anybody.
Kick-ass Short Round.
Yeah. That's who should have been in it.
Because he didn't...
If the
he-
short round was the
Williams.
bad guy, I'd be like...
There's the guy who played Short Round, like, become, like, an action choreographer in Hollywood. Like, that's what he went on to do. So, like...
He was still acting in the sort of 90s, I think. But yeah, he'd kind of given up on acting by sort of 2000, didn't he?
You could write a movie where Indiana Jones's real son comes into conflict with Short Round because he's abandoned Short Round
Yeah.
to spend time with his adopted son has
Or
been
he's spending all the time in the short round and ignoring
And the
his
real
real
sons.
son.
Yeah.
he's jealous.
That's who's Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, Adam Driver having a fight with Sean Round.
Mutt!
Sean Round.
Or how
Short
about
Round would have been
Short Round goes back to the Goonies and then they help Indiana Jones out like that?
Oh, this is all infinitely better than fucking
Great
Crystal Skulls.
stuff.
Why is Mutt Williams' surname Williams?
Because
John Williams, that's why.
yeah. Dun, 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 dun. No.
Literally, that's
I
why.
believe it's because of the British airman that Marion ended up marrying, or am I
Yes,
confused up with
it
Captain
is, yeah.
America?
The actual reason the character is called Williams is John Williams. But the in-canon thing is that she married a bloke called Williams and he
And you
was
said
he was per yeah.
And
Because it
obviously,
was the
if he
50s or
called,
40s.
I was going to say if his child was called Jones, that would be a giveaway. Of course,
Mutt
but-
Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could have called him Ravenwood, I suppose.
Yeah, I think his mum's name would have been fine.
Yeah,
That's a much
because the
cooler name
father's
than
clearly
Williams.
far out of it by that stage.
Yeah, yeah.
Dead, I want to say.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Adoptive father, the stepfather, I want to say.
Killed by magnetic aliens.
Of course he was. They landed on him.
He put one on one side of his neck, one on the other side. Oh no! The one thing the instructions told me not to do.
Don't swallow two magnets at the same time, exactly.
He was trying to stick something to the fridge and just terrible accident. Here's a question for people. Does anyone in this film have an arc?
Ooh, of the Covenant?
Ah.
We see it.
No.
Technically, as much as I hate to say this, Ray Winston's character kind of has an arc.
Does he though? Because he's always a bad
It
guy.
happens
Starts
all
off
at
in
the
a
end.
boot and he ends up in the sky.
That's travelling. That's not a character. There's a difference between
That's
going
Oscar
somewhere.
Wilde said, we're all in the boot.
That's
looking
not an
at
arc,
the
that's
sky."
a trajectory.
He starts off as a traitor, I guess, and he
he's
goes back
still
and
a-
forth a bit. But then he sacrificed himself for the greater good.
Not really.
Nope.
He dies stealing gold as a bad guy.
Yeah, but then
Essentially.
he says I think because he knows if he holds onto that rope, I think it's a rope that or whip maybe, that he will kill them all. So he sacrifices himself because it will save Indiana Jones's life.
Did he say something like, I'll be all right? Or something like
I'll
that?
be fine because
That's it,
I don't care anymore.
To be fair,
Oh, bloody hit him, Indy. When I get over there.
He went from
Oh,
being
lamp 'em.
selfish as anything to that degree that he would steal gold for literally from everything, grave robbing and all that stuff, to selfless enough to let himself die.
The big issue there, of course, is that he goes through that arc in the blink of an eye.
It's
Because there's no
still
setup for it
an
at all.
arc. And I would say the monkeys, maybe. They started off neutral, and then they liked the good guys.
The fridge has an arc.
Fridge's arc.
Yeah.
that has a trajectory.
Shit, no, that's a good point. That's a really solid statement, because I'm sticking with my fucking very wasted answer. But Ox is
They all kind of end up back where they were.
dealing.
Like Marion, sort of, but she's not much of a character anyway.
No.
Oxley gets his sanity back.
Yeah, it's not
Not
really
an
a-
arc, is
No.
it? It's just
Indy's-
something
He
that
doesn't learn.
happens.
Everybody
It's
goes
his
back
own
to
fault.
square one, basically.
Indy's meant to have an arc, which is that he's meant to learn to be a dad. That's
Which
the
he
point.
does
is-
not.
Which he just, doesn't. But
He gets
then it's
married,
snapped
but
on.
that's-
Shia LaBeouf have an arc.
Indiana Jones needs to be seen to be like selfish and shitty to his pseudo son at the beginning, but he's just basically instantly welcoming of this role as a father, and then finds out that he is a father and is like, fair enough.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Fucked a lot of women over the years, you know.
we should probably get married.
Bound to
shouldn't
happen
we?
eventually.
It's the right thing to do.
It's the 50s, people will frown. No, I genuinely think that, controversial about the Star Wars and the Han Solo mindset, that the most iconic Harrison Ford characters that we all sort of know and love in Blade Runner and in Star Wars and in Indiana Jones, and fuck it, in The Fugitive, are going to be terrible fucking dads.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
they're such like, I'm the center of attention and I want to protect. Even fucking fucking Force One, my family. And he's like always banging on about his family, but fucking terrible at anything with them. And the second they actually need something as a father role, he's always like, I'm so busy.
Is Harrison Ford a bad dad in real life? Is that what we're learning here?
No, because his son's a chef.
Well, that's bulletproof.
Solves all the problems.
I'm going to stand by that.
I believe Harrison Ford's son also auditioned for the role of Matt Williams and didn't get it.
Oh.
I think he's got a few sons.
One of them
daughters.
did. One of them did.
Yeah.
One of them's a chef.
One of
One
them's
of
a chef.
them's not Matt Williams.
That's something to be proud of, though.
Yeah, to be
None
fair.
of my children are actually.
You're right.
Williams.
He is a good parent.
Actually, now having said that, I was going to say
You don't
because
want
he
to be
didn't
in
go
this
to, like,
movie franchise,
because he didn't go
kid.
to films and stuff, but then Ice Cube's son was amazing in Straight Outta Compton, so that means yeah.
That sounded almost like a logic puzzle. It's like one of Harrison Ford's sons is a chef. One of them is not Matt Williams.
Which one of them is Shia LaBeouf?
One of them lives in a house with a green door.
Both are on a train traveling at 30 miles an hour.
Which one does
will kill you
Harrison?
first?
Which one does Harrison's love?
Harrison Ford loves Harrison
None of them. Exactly.
and hates all his characters.
Pretty much.
Wonder if he'll kill off Indy.
Yes, of course
Absolutely.
he will,
He tried
without a
to.
doubt.
Yeah, that was his plan for the fourth
Everything.
one. Yeah. He tried to kill him off and then they wouldn't let him. Like he did in Return of the Jedi.
But now he's really, really far too old. They might
Yeah.
well give me the excuse.
He wants to go back to like 6 days and 7 nights and whatever that was, and with Anne Hesh, and he wants to kill that character off as well.
Yep.
Go back through all his old.
Regarding Henry,
oeuvre.
he's dead.
Yep,
Yeah.
gone.
He's just quantum
Sabrina,
leaping
get
back
rid of
into his own timeline and killing all of his own.
Yeah, yeah.
He's loopering himself.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford kills the Harrison Ford universe.
Oh,
he,
God,
he is
amazing.
he is going to be in the remake of Jet Li's The One, and he's going to be going for different universes and finding the Harrison Ford and killing him.
Hello.
At one point, he's going to bump into Sean Bean, who's going back through his films trying to save himself.
Oh my god, that
And
is
they
a
cross paths
spectacular
and just
concept.
nod.
Don't want to die. Not again.
So should we get on to some Rotten Tomatoes scores, gentlemen?
Ooh, yes.
Dun.
And
Done.
I'll let you know now I have all 4 Indiana Jones movies
Oh, God.
available for guesses.
Oh man, I should have looked this up and cheated, but I...
That's not like you, Stuart. So let's stick with just Kingdom of the Crystal Skull for now. Percentage guesses. Who wants to go first? Any guesses? Alec, you look ready.
I will guess, and I'm going to guess at like 70%.
Okay.
Fuck, I was gonna say,
That's also
so
what I
do
was
we-
going to
yeah,
say.
do we?
You're wrong, all right.
No, Alec, there's going to be some competition in this.
Do I want to go high? I think maybe a bit lower. Actually, I'm going to go for 68 of your human percents.
I'm going to go higher and say 76.
Fuck it, 81.
81. It's not 81, but Tim's bloody close. It's 77%, which is like 30% too high, 40% too high.
What's
Good
the
Lord.
user score like?
It is 6.9, which I think is also
That's
too high.
weirdly high,
Yeah, it's weird.
Don't tell me it got higher than one of the other films.
No. They were
No,
all gonna be
it
solid
is the
80s,
lowest.
90s.
Don't worry. And I'll give you a clue. The rest of them kind of make sense. Like the ratings are in order. None of them are lower than 77. This is
What
still
I'm
the worst.
expecting is Raiders high, highest, Temple less high.
Rather than guessing actual percentages, you want to just do that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
and
It's
Crusade.
like,
Yeah, it's the order of
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Raiders being the highest, Temple being the lowest of the three, and Last Crusade being in the middle of them. Is my guess.
Disagree.
Oh no, I disagree, but I think that's what it will be.
Yeah, I would say this. I would say Raiders is probably like a 98% or something, and I reckon Temple somewhere about like 83, and Last Crusade at like 93 or something.
I think that Crusade is going to be slightly higher than Raiders.
Because of the whole
Ooh.
longevity sort of...
That
But
might be
definitely
true, actually.
Temple of Doom will be bottom.
Yeah, I think Temple of Doom will be bottom. I think that both Raiders and Last Crusade will hit into the 90s, possibly high 90s, and I think Temple will be in the high 80s.
Yeah. Yep.
So Temple's the highest then?
Ah! Temple, of course, in the lowest, 85. Then Crusade is 88. And Raiders is 95.
Really?
So Raiders is definitively the most popular, critically acclaimed.
Crusade would have been in the high 90s, but interesting.
Yeah, I thought Crusade would be pretty close second there, but it is, not that far above Temple of Doom. And considering, like I said, we've had tweets and messages from people saying, like, fix Temple of Doom, ignoring the fact that it's a prequel because they're idiots. Yeah. But, like, that's the one that people say, oh, that's the first bad one in the franchise and all that kind of stuff. Whereas, like, well, is it 85%? I know we talked about Shrek 2 and it's a fucking...
Fuck you, Shrek fans.
Critically acclaimed. Seriously. We thought Ghostbusters 2 was going to cause the most trouble.
It was Shrek. Shrek was the one.
The Shrek fans. Dare we go to Shrek Fest? And...
a beautiful moment in that one of the episodes where we end up saying, I don't think there's any like Shrek fans at all. Turns out, all of them.
Yeah, there's loads of
They're
them.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're vengeful.
Both Shrek films rated higher than three out of the 4 Indiana Jones movies.
And that's why it's bullshit. That's why we were right. I'll see you in hell.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, we've got 70 in chronological order. We'll go 95, 85, 88, and 77. And I think there should be a much larger gap.
That needs
there.
to be...
Crystal Skull is noticeably worse than the other three.
60-50.
And it's only, like, what is that? 8 points lower than Temple of Doom. And granted, it's not a score out of 100, it's percentage of positive.
I'm assuming that this has some similarities to the Star Wars prequels, though, where it was the Star Wars prequels, when they came out, were initially reasonably well reviewed. Yeah. It was only after it had sunk in and there was this backlash against them that people started to think of them more negatively. But
a lot of people have had the same thing with Crystal Skull. Yeah. Saying like, oh yeah, Indiana Jones, love Indiana Jones. Wait a minute, that was shite.
And I wonder if the difference here is that because Indy came out later, it is still the contemporary to the time reviews that inform the Rotten Tomatoes score,
very much so.
rather than
Yes,
the
you're
retrospectives that you get for the prequels.
I think it came out at a very specific period. I'm rewatching all the Marvel films at the moment, and I can remember watching Iron Man, and it had the trailer for Crystal Skull on the DVD, and I was like, ooh, yeah, that, and like remembering the hype that there was around this film, and the fact that Iron Man, as much, I was, big Marvel fan, so I was obviously excited for it, but there wasn't nearly as much hype for Iron Man as there was for this. And I think if Crystal Skull had come out 1 or 2 years later, it would have had a very different reception, because you have
Dark Knight as well.
Yeah, you have Dark Knight, you have Iron Man, and I think this period, the very mid 2000s, there was a little bit of a fallow period for blockbusters, and we went through some real dodgy territory, and then we got that kind of kick up the arse towards the end of that period.
Absolutely.
I'm sure people will come up with examples to prove me wrong, but that is my gut feeling. I think if this had come out, like I say, even 18 months later, it would have had a different reception.
I wonder how it would have gone down if it came out, like Alex said, in the 90s or something like that. Or if it came out 10 years earlier or 5 years earlier.
It would just be such a radically different film, because it wouldn't have any CGI in it, or not nearly half as much.
Good point.
I also wonder if there's something to do with the age of the critics who are reviewing the film at the time, because you're in a weird window there as far as
the handover between certain generational things.
because again, I think that in the world we're in now, I think people would have jumped on that movie a lot more than they did at the time.
Absolutely.
Christ, yeah. Again, Indiana Jones 5 is yet to come out, but if it had the Last Jedi sort of style, yes, we still have forums, still have the internet, still have bloggers and all that sort of stuff, but not to the venomous degree, I would say, that we have now. I mean, because again, the year before, I think mentioned this on a previous episode of the podcast, the infamously, well, I say infamous, no one gives a shit now, but it was the year of the threequel at the time. We had Shrek 3, Transformers 3, and Pirates of the Caribbean 3, and I was like, oh my god, it's gonna be
Spider-Man 3.
Oh,
you said Transformers 3.
It did, and I meant to say Spider-Man 3. I apologise. Thank you. Yes. So the idea of these huge major releases and such. So I think, again, the idea of going back to something might have been like, oh, well, brilliant, this is another another sequel coming out, but it's back time we all know and love. Because, again, I think at that point, there weren't any... Hang on, let me just do a bit of thinking. Other than the Star Wars prequel element, which at that point had finished and had been, like... It made a fuck ton of money, so it did what it needed to do in certain people's eyes. There hadn't been the sort of thing we have so much recently, which is revisiting old franchises and saying we need to go back and do a sequel, and not just a reboot but a sequel to it with some of the returning cast.
19 years in the making, like
Exactly.
Crystal Skull was,
Yeah,
or Blues Brothers 2000 that we've also talked about. And
exactly.
yeah,
There are very few of those ones that now they're 10 apiece. We get them all the time. It's like, oh, what's going on for a while? Oh, that's been around for a while. We'll bring it back with one person from the cast and we'll make it work, whatever. Or we'll just reboot it fresh out of the box. Because they're trying to get now we understand the Indiana Jones mindset of like, we're trying to get both markets, the new people on board for the idea of what this could be, and the old market of get that audience in at the same time. Jurassic World kind of did it a little bit by bringing in Henry Wu being the only element. I remember the advertising for Fallen Kingdom made a big fuss about Jeff Goldblum's back. And to the degree that in the trailer in Odeon cinemas in Britain, I'm sure they had similar ones abroad. I got an interview with Bryce Dallas Howard and Chris Pratt doing a fucking awful T-Rex fucking raw impression. It was so painful. Best thing about Fallen Kingdom coming out is that advert not being on anymore. And they said, and Jeff Goldblum's back. And it's like, no, I know for a fact, as a film person, that one scene is all he's in. That's it. That's the whole fucking thing. And it was. Spoilers, I guess. But that's the whole point. It's the whole, come back for this, guys. We know you want to see this. But also kids who've grown up with just Jurassic World. That's huge success.
Goldblum also did that in Independence Day as well.
Exactly.
Perfect example. Yeah.
I think that if there is something positive to be said for Crystal Skull is that it doesn't feel like a cynical attempt to just get more money. It feels weirdly earnest. It's just earnest from George Lucas being weird and demanding that there's crystal aliens. And
so that's why Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is crap. So should we tease some pitches, gentlemen? I'll come to Matt and Tim first for a team name, please.
Okay,
gentlemen.
Let's do a little bit of an explanation first.
First. Okay. I always like you have a build-up of like, wait until after the pitch and then we'll tell you our team name and shit like that.
Oh, no, we're going to tell you team name, but there are rules. Whenever anyone wants to address us as a team name, you have to address our team name in the way that we tell you to do it.
Okay.
If anyone doesn't, we're going to ignore you, okay?
You've done this before.
Tim and I, this week, are Jonesy! And if you would like to address us, you must say in a Ray Winston voice,
Jonesy.
No.
I'm sorry, who are you asking for?
Yeah, there's no one here by that name.
Yeah, our team is just called Jonesy, said normally. So
Yeah, we will accept a Jonesy.
This week we have Jonesy versus Jonesy.
Jonesy Wales and the Pussycats. So that's our team name. See you next week.
And cast, crew, director,
Yep, I will pass
elevator pitch, all the little teasers and good stuff, please. Sirs.
So our title is Indiana Jones and the Hunt for El Dorado. Our release year is 1995, and our director is Mr. Steven Spielberg, who at that point would be between the 1-2 punch of Jurassic Park and Schindler's List and The Lost World, Jurassic Park. He's kind of in a weird period where he's mostly just producing TV stuff.
because he's peaked.
He's got a hole in the schedule. So our returning cast is Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, Jonathan Rhys-Davies as Salah, and Sean Connery as Henry Jones Sr.
Our new cast in the role of Lieutenant Thibaut Mercier is Jean Reno. who's fresh off Leon at this point, hasn't gone and done Mission Impossible yet, so he's sort of relatively unknown at this
Hasn't
point.
done Onimusha 3 yet, but that's his starring role.
Christ. Jürgen Prochnow as Sturmbannführer Köln, who's been in The Mouth of Madness and Judge Dredd. It goes off to The English Patient. He's the guy you look at him and go, much like Aaron Guevara, is like, oh, that guy! Him! In the role of Untersturmführer Ilya Keller, Casper Van Dien, who hasn't done Starship Troopers yet and doesn't realise he's doing big old Nazis, but he's doing a big old Nazi now.
He doesn't know he's a Nazi, but we do.
We know he's a Nazi, yeah. In the role of Renata Ziegler, another good old Nazi, Gwyneth Paltrow. She's been in Hook and Seven, about to do Emma and Sliding Doors. And Peter King, the non-Nazi.
No, that should be Peter King,
Peter King,
because he's Australian.
Ben Mendelsohn.
Oh, I love a bit of Mendo.
Yep, bit of Metal Skin, goes on to be Vertical Limit and Mullet and other things, but becomes Ben Mendelsohn later. But our composer is John Williams, who has done films like Schindler's List and Nixon and Everything Under the Fucking Sun.
You went for Nixon and not like Star Wars and Jurassic Park.
He did that around that
Indiana
time.
Jones. Yes.
He did that at the time. He is, of course, returning from other Indiana Jones films with his iconic theme.
Oh, man. I still get so excited just hearing that. It's like I'm back in the cinema.
Da-da-dun, da-da-dun.
Yeah, exactly.
And our elevator pitch. At the close of the Second World War, Indiana Jones uncovers a Nazi plot to unearth as many occult items as possible to potentially resurrect their fallen leader and restore their forces to power and glory, taking Indy from Turkey and Germany to the US and Mexico.
You know that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is the only indie movie that occurs entirely in the Western Hemisphere as well.
Oh.
There you go. Fun little trivia that I didn't really get a chance to drop in earlier. And you mentioned all these various travelling places. There you go. How exciting. Speaking of exciting, I was going to find out what they're going up against.
Here we go.
Alec and Stuart.
Right.
Team name, please, sirs.
Our team name you also need to pronounce.
Yay! Fuck you, Jack.
And our team name is Part-Time!
Yes!
Right.
Well, give me some more information. What else you got?
No, fuck off.
Is there a Welshman in this?
There is... I do not believe there is a Welshman.
I'm a little disappointed.
in our Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones and the Carmarthen Conundrum.
Indiana Jones and the Mine. What, Solomon's Mine? Nope. Just the mines.
Indiana Jones and the Quest for Coal.
Lots of CGI sheep in that one.
Indiana Jones and the Rabbit Rampage. No, none of these are films, unfortunately.
That's a Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, it certainly does sound like that.
We want a Harry Potter, Indiana Jones, and Wallace and Gromit crossover.
More
Nice.
cheese, Indy.
More cheese, Jonesy.
Da, 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 da.
Oh, well done, sir.
Indiana Jones and the wrong trousers.
Okay, so our film is released in the Earth year.
Not space year this time. You
Not
usually go for
space
space
year.
years.
In the Earth year, 1998. And the title of our film is Indiana Jones and the Spear of Destiny.
Oh, okay. Some Longinus stuff going on.
Our director is Steven Spielberg.
I can confirm this.
So this is sort of around the Saving Private Ryan sort of era.
Because fuck that movie.
Take that, Matt Damon.
So instead of making that film, he's going to make this and The Lost World twice.
Lost World 2, Lost Again.
1941 to 1942. But that is the title. That's the full title.
That's amazing. Right, for returning cast, we have Indiana Jones, played by Harrison Ford. I would have substituted in the solo actor's name, but I can never remember it.
Alden Ehrenreich.
That's it, I can never remember his name. I always think of...
You can cast him as a Nazi because that's the most German name in the history of the world.
Alden Ehrenreich.
Ehrenreich. He literally has Reich in his fucking
In
name.
1998, he's probably like a fetus or something, so it probably wouldn't work.
Depressingly, yeah, probably was.
Hitler clone.
Oh.
No. And also returning, Wan Lee, also known as Shorty or Short Round,
Yeah.
Jonathan Ki Kwan. Albina Zoloznik, she's a new character, played by Mia Jovovich. The character of General Drugov will be played by Andrew Divoff. Professor Anna Robinson will be played by Jane Seymour. The character of Marta Krupin will be played by Mila Kunis.
Oh, how old is she at this point?
She's about 16.
Yeah.
Done a couple of things. Chasavoy will be played by Igor, here we go, Zhizhinkine. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Who's that guy?
He is the only guy I liked in Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Crystal Skulls. Oh my God,
is he the guy who gets eaten by the ants?
Yes.
Yes.
He
He's
is.
quite an iconically interesting face and things like that.
Exactly,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
Politically interesting face.
You'd be surprised how
There's
much
good things to put on your
filming
CV.
stuff. Yeah.
And Agent Culling is played by John C. McGinley.
Oh, cool. Nice choices.
Yep. Good old Dr. Cox. And the score, of course, by Jimmy from the Chip Shop. Oh, wait, he was ill. John Williams had to do it.
One day you're going to use Dan Williams, our very own
Yes.
soundtrack writer.
He could actually do it as well and have it playing in the background while we spoke. Imagine that.
Would you like an elevator pitch?
That would be lovely. Thank you, Alec.
Okay. In 1952, archaeology professor Dr. Henry Jones Jr. teams up with an old friend to investigate the supernatural legacy of the Nazis, now being utilised by the USSR ellipsis.
To give them their full title. Interesting. Both sticking with Nazis?
Well,
somewhat?
yeah.
And-
Fuck Nazis.
Oh, dear. So we've got Nazis and Soviets and no fucking interdimensional beings, which is a good start,
you
gentlemen.
know of.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, in the last 10 seconds, there's a spaceship flying up in the distance.
Turns out
And then
Jesus
he's
was an alien.
I think this is the thing, isn't it? It's tapping into stuff from older civilizations, older cultures that we may not know about, and it's like, oh, maybe there's a bit of mystery to things. I mean, because that's the classic explorer mindset, isn't it? That's what Indiana Jones kind of taps into ultimately, is the thing of, even though we've explored the world, there might be some dark recess we're not so sure about, and it's in our past.
Or maybe we've just gone really crazy.
If
Who
you've got
knows?
fucking Doc Brown in there because it's the 50s.
It does take place in Hill Valley, but that's coincidental.
Something's going to be done about your kids! Mutt Williams!
It's got Shrek in it because it's set in the 1950s.
And Nicole Kidman as an investigative journalist with no surname.
Oh my god.
So, for next week, we will delve into both pitches. But until then, you can tweet at us at Sequelisers. You can listen to our Spotify soundtracks by the link in the description, or searching for Sequelisers on Spotify, that also works. And you can email us sequelisers@gmail.com if you dare. And if you don't recognise any cast members or anything like that, Matthew makes lovely little collages of, I think it's period accurate
Yeah, headshots
actor
and things of...
headshots
Yeah.
of, yeah.
So you can get an idea of what you'd be looking at.
Because the amount of times you say a name and you say, if you look him up, you'll know what you mean. Look on our Instagram and you'll be like, oh yeah, it's the guy. Yeah, it's this the German guy from the thing or whatever.
We post them to Twitter too, I believe.
We do. We
We
try
do
to get them
indeed.
around as much as possible. Yeah.
And we use them on the YouTube uploads on the Extra Ashen.
We'll post them through your door if you want.
If you say sequelizers into a mirror 3 times at midnight, then
I'll fuck you up.
Then Shrek 2 starts playing on the mirror.
Bill Candy arrives.
The Candy Man!
Oh, we'll
See you next week.
Yay! Oh, dun 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 dun. Somebody once told me that
Jonesy!